"Honey, have you seen my jacket?" Bill yelled out, searching the lounge of their beautiful home. "It's hanging on the chair in the kitchen, where you last put it," a female voice bellowed back from upstairs, Bill's wife, Angie. Bill, in his 40s with a slight balding complexion, smoothly shaven, stepped into the kitchen. Retrieving his jacket, he slid it on his thin frame. Bill was a reasonably handsome man, glasses gave him a more geeky, brainy appearance. Grabbing his leather black briefcase off the couch, he turned and headed to the front door. "I'm off now, hun. I'll be back at the usual time," Bill informed his wife. "Okay," she replied from the bedroom upstairs. Bill opened the door and left. A few moments later, the revving of his car engine started up and he pulled away and headed to work. Angie appeared at the top of the stairs. Angie was in her late 30s and rather pretty. Bill had batted above his average in catching her on his arm. The two had been married for over a decade now, but their passion had slowly fizzled out to almost nothing. She stepped into the kitchen, taking notice of the pots and pans that were left from the night before. Giving a heavy sigh, she set off to do her daily chores. Keeping the house clean like the dutiful wife she'd become of late. Hours passed before Angie finished, stepping into the lounge and crashing down on the couch with a deep sigh. Her life had become boring, a daily routine she wished she could escape. Grabbing the remote, she pointed to the large television and switched it on. Flicking through the channels, nothing really took her fancy. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Angie froze. "Who is that?" she thought to herself. She wanted to continue, to finish what she started, but it could be one of her neighbors or friends. Ding dong. It rang again. She switched off the television and stepped into the hallway to answer the door. Opening the door, Angie found a smartly attired young man, briefcase in hand, standing before her. Angie's eyes widened seeing how dashing he looked. He stood about 5'5", with a slight stubble which added to his manliness, deep hazel eyes. "Hello madam, I believe we have an appointment," he said. "An appointment?" Angie questioned before it hit her. "Oh," she quickly covered her mouth. "Sorry, I forgot about it," she said. "Oh, maybe I should come back at a later date if you're busy with something," he remarked, noticing how flustered she appeared to be. "No," she almost yelled out, as he looked to turn away. "Please, come in, I've got time for you," Angie said, standing aside and allowing the salesman inside. He entered. Closing the door, Angie stepped past and showed him into the lounge. Upon entering, the salesman noticed a rather pungent smell that struck his nostrils. Angie invited him to take a seat on the couch. "I'll just make us a cup of coffee, then we can chat about it all," Angie said, as she turned and headed into the kitchen. While Angie was busy in the kitchen, the salesman opened his briefcase to pull out all the necessary paperwork. Angie returned with cups of coffee and placed them down on the small table before she sat down at his side. For the next several minutes, the salesman went through the documents. Angie occasionally glanced at this attractive young man at her side. She wet her lips and tried to listen to the words slipping from his manly warm lips. After a little while, Angie excused herself for a moment. She picked up the empty cups and took them into the kitchen. He heard her go upstairs. The salesman was alone. He placed the documents on the table and sat waiting. His own mind began to return to the pungent smell. Biting his bottom lip, glancing around to check he was alone. It was such a sweet smell. A million thoughts ran through his mind. Was this attractive woman on the couch he sat on? Her face was red and she was definitely flustered from something. He knew she was married but was either not getting any attention from her husband. The sound of Angie returning caused his heart to race. Sweat formed upon his forehead. He pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his brow. Angie entered the room, returning to her position at his side. "Now then, where were we?" she said as the salesman picked up the paperwork and started talking about the wording on the documents. A good 10 or 15 minutes passed as the two discussed the documents at great length. She couldn't take her eyes off this handsome young man. Right, I have all your details. Now, what about your husband? The salesman asked. My husband, what about him? Angie replied curiously. Will he be requiring this also? He asked. Oh. Angie replied with a sweet smile. Sorry, I thought you were asking where he was right now, she replied, a twinkle in her eye. Where is he right now? The salesman asked since she brought it up. Oh, he's at work. He's always at work. Pays little attention to me. Angie said. Surely he pays attention to you, I mean, you're a rather attractive lady, if you don't mind me saying, he informed her with a warm smile. Thank you. No one said that to me in so long. Angie responded. Do you want to know what I was doing just before you come? Angie said with a grin. I'm not sure. You certainly looked a little flustered. I thought maybe it was because you were doing some housework, he said, in truth knowing what she was doing but he didn't want to give it away. No. I was actually relaxing. Angie said openly. With this. She added. I'm sorry I disturbed you, I could always come back at a later date, the salesman spoke, hoping she wouldn't let him go. No, don't be silly. In fact, since you're here, I don't need this anymore. Angie said. She go to close him, hugged his into her arms. She kissed his. He didn't know what to say, or how to respond. They don't teach you this in training. He thought to himself. He sat there, accepting his fate in her hands. Can you guess what happens next? After sitting together a while, to regain their composure, the salesman grabbed his briefcase, leaned in and gave Angie a long kiss, thanking her for what happened today. Angie showed him to the door. Maybe you can pop around next week, at the same time. So we can discuss this some more. Angie said, opening the door. Oh, definitely. In fact, I may have to make regular visits, to make sure you're satisfied with the service I provide, the salesman said, as he stepped outside. Well, I've got no complaints so far. Angie responded, as he walked down the path to his vehicle parked on the road. Angie closed the door, returning to the living room. Glancing at the clock, she just had time to clean up before her husband came home. She set out to work. That evening, Bill returned home after a hard day's work to find Angie in the living room, on the couch, watching some soap opera as usual. Hi hun, how was your day? He asked, with no real care in his tone of voice as he stepped to the table where his meal was already waiting. Oh, the same as usual. Angie responded, with a twinkle in her eye, and a Cheshire cat-like grin on her ruby lips. If only he knew. She thought to herself.